Alabama's highest paid bureaucrat going to war with conservatives and conservative organizations in the state, saying we don't have good positive ideas. Well, what's his good positive idea? More money, so we need gambling. Well, on that point of gambling, we're going to be talking about that a little bit more as well. And also, there was a coordinated effort, maybe a communications effort by all of the state agencies to promote Kay Ivey and talk about how wonderful she is all at the exact same time. Very suspicious. We're going to hammer that as well, bringing on Jeff Poor, our editor-in-chief, to talk about all the things going on in the state today on 1819 News, the podcast. We have an incredible culture here in the state of Alabama, but our politics and public policy don't reflect the people of Alabama. Media drives culture. Culture is what drives politics and public policy. Welcome, everyone, to 1819 News, the podcast. I'm Brian Dawson, CEO of 1819 News and host of this here podcast, where we are in pursuit of a free and flourishing Alabama every single week. We'll be no different today, bringing on our editor-in-chief at 1819 News, Jeff Poor, to discuss a couple local topics, and if there's time, I may do a little bit of monologuing after that. We'll see where the conversation goes. But more than anything, I think really in 2025, I'm going to be shifting my podcast to really start getting into some of the nitty-gritty, what's actually going on in Alabama state politics. As I've done my monologues, I've really honed in and focused on that. Got a lot of feedback. There seems to be a lot of interest about what's actually taking place in the state. And between Jeff and I, there's really nobody better suited to be talking about what's going on, as we have a window into what goes on at the State House. So we're going to dive into that. The two topics we're going to cover today are David Bronner decided he was going to use their publication that reaches over 399,000 members to bash conservatives and conservative organizations. And I'm going to read it here once we get started. But basically, it seems like it's on one hand, he's bashing conservatives, and the other hand, he's promoting gambling. And so we're going to talk about that. And it seems that he's almost waged war on 1819 News and even Jeff Poor specifically. So we'll dive into that. And then we're also going to talk about the rumor mill of what's going on with Kay Ivey. There was a coordinated effort by all the state agencies to put out positive press about what a wonderful job she's done and how incredible she is and what a career she's had. And they almost read like eulogies. And so it was very, very strange. We published that, some conversation on Twitter, got the rumor mill going that you know, she may be stepping down. Maybe she is, maybe she isn't. We've gone through this a number of times already since 1819 has started. And so we're going to dive into, you know, kind of what our predictions are on that, what that means, if it is true. But we also did another story, you know, I think it was on Monday, where we reached out and didn't really get a lot of communication back from her office about it. So, you know, I don't know, maybe we can make bets to see what happens as we go into 2025, but we'll see. So we're going to jump in. Welcome in, Jeff Poor. Thanks so much for taking the time to join me here today.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Always appreciate it.
Yeah, we got the home studio thing going on. Think this will be a lot of fun, be informational for you guys. Before I jump in, I want to ask you guys, go to the YouTube page. You can put in 1819 podcast in the search bar on YouTube, and it'll take you to this podcast. Click on it, subscribe to it, follow it, whatever the button is, like it, comment, share, do all the things to boost the algorithms. We were unceremoniously removed about, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago, and we're back on, and so we're now trying to build up our following. So please help us to do that by subscribing, liking, sharing, commenting, and also go on to social media and share this. Share this on Twitter, share this on Facebook, share this everywhere to get the information out. Our goal is to get information to the people of Alabama so that they can participate in their civic duties in an informed manner, and you can help us to do that by sharing this information. So with that, I'll jump right in. So over the weekend, someone sent me a text message with this publication. It's called The Advisor, Teachers, Employees, and Judicial. And is this a publication of the retirement systems of Alabama, Jeff? Is that what this is?
Yeah, it comes out every month, as if you need that much communication from David Bronner on a monthly basis. But I guess it's meant to kind of give you a sort of a synopsis of maybe some of the financials, maybe what's going on in the markets and whatnot, because these are, retirement funds that David Bronner's RSA is managing. But what he has done is turned it into like a newsletter, but at every beginning of every month, it leads off with a column from Mr. Bronner.
Yeah, well, that is an interesting communication strategy to push a political agenda, it seems. I assume is this paid for by taxpayers?
I mean, technically, it's government money. I wouldn't say taxpayer money necessarily because, pensions go into it. But at some point, there is all money's fungible, and, RSA gets a big appropriation every year from the state general fund. So, I mean, in theory, they would probably tell you no, but practically there probably is some taxpayer dollars going into this publication.
Yeah, and if it's accurate, he's reaching 399,000 people, and he's not just talking about markets. He's basically using this to push whatever political agenda he has, which is an interesting strategy. Yeah. But I'm going to read this. Just kind of breeze through it. I think all of it's important. I was just going to try to read a piece, but I think just here it's not very long, and you'll just kind of see what we're talking about as I read it. So it says, this is from David Bronner in this month's edition. There's nothing wrong with being conservative or liberal on specific issues. Everyone is entitled to their political opinion, but we should all agree that we want what's best for the state of Alabama and its people. A handful of conservative organizations like Alpha, Alabama Policy Institute, 1819 News, and Eagle Forum make it a habit of being argumentative about everything. That is perfectly fine, but for Alabama to improve, it needs these very smart conservatives to push forward some reasonable solutions to our problems. Alabama has old problems such as overcrowded prisons, underfunded state troopers, and mental health systems and underperforming schools. Now we have new problems like failing hospitals and overcrowded interstates. We need to continue funding workforce development efforts while funding increases are needed for retirement and health care benefits. The influx of federal monies after COVID helped to address some of these old problems, mainly through funding new programs for public education and mental health and partially funding a new prison. However, these federal monies are going away, as are some of the large budget surpluses the state has enjoyed over the past few years. Alabamians have made it clear that they do not want new taxes, despite Alabama having the 49th lowest taxes in the country. That's worth coming back to and breaking down that that's not really true. Only Alaska is lower, according to David Bronner. However, we are 100% surrounded by gambling in Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, and Mississippi, who all enjoy our money for their solutions to their problems. And the 2025 legislative session is the time to do something. The session after will be an election year, which is not the time to take on difficult solutions because people know if they vote for gambling, they won't get elected again. That's built in. But anyway, gambling is anything but a perfect solution, yet attempting to do nothing is not solving our problems. The time to address old and new problems is now, and gambling can be the answer. I have often repeated to you what my father said to me as a young man full of ideas. Dad would say, ideas without money remain ideas. And there's a little cartoon figure with a dog with the Alabama flag wrapped around his neck that wants treats, and there's an empty treat jar, and it says, why is Alabama's treat jar always empty? So I have some thoughts on this, but I want to turn it over to Jeff. What do you think about this, man?
He's using it. Well, this is like we were saying earlier. He's using it to promote whatever hobby horse he's on that day. Sometimes it's a tackle school choice. He's used it in the past for that. But I felt, Brian, you and I talked about it when he named 1819 News, specifically, along with Alpha, Eagle Forum, and API. But when he calls us out, I mean, we got to respond to it. And I'm for whatever reason, yours truly has been on David Bronner's radar. I don't know why, but I also write a column in Mobile for Lagniappe, and he sent a letter to the editor to respond to something I had written like a couple of weeks ago. And the guy who is like the highest paid state bureaucrat to hone in on going against conservative ideas, I guess my question would be, don't you have better things to do?
Yeah. It is. It seems crazy. And, but, to some degree, I will say, in kind of shameless plug for 1819 News, you have the highest paid, one of the most powerful people in the state, who you, Jeff, and also 1819 News have so gotten under his skin that he felt he needed to use this publication to throw some shade at us and then also promote a potential gambling push. I think my biggest problem with it is I think I would simply say he's accusing us of not having solutions, and I think you hit it well in your op-ed. It's not our jobs to actually implement solutions. That's what we elected you to do, right?
You're the bureaucrat. You're the liberal, big government solution, one-size-fits-all bureaucrat. Don't come at us expecting us to come up with all the solutions. Sure, we'll have ideas, but we're not in government. We don't have power. Brian, you and I have no power. I mean, other than we play a role in the fourth estate as a watchdog, but David Bronner is an actual government official. And here he is he's as guilty of this right here than we are. But I hate when they do that. They say, you guys just want to knock everything down that we do and never give us credit for the good stuff. Well, this isn't how it works, guys. I mean, we pay your salaries. We pay a lot of taxes in this state. You come up with the solutions, not us.
Yeah, and I want to say it's like of the top 25, the state's top 25 highest paid employees, like 19 of them are at RSA.
Yes.
Something like that. I don't know if that's exact numbers.
You're in the ballpark, right?
Yeah. So, but that goes to my point that I want to make is we actually have posited solutions. We actually do talk about solutions on the podcast, on the radio all the time. Hey, school choice, that was something that we mentioned as a solution that we thought would be a good idea to our poor performing schools. But just like in education and every other problem the state has, David Bronner and a good chunk of the state legislature that isn't the conservatives that are voting against gambling and those guys, but the majority of the people in Montgomery have never found a problem that more money can't solve, yet more money never seems to solve the problems. They throw money, and there's literally not even a blip on the radar of any positive outcome coming from the money that's being thrown. The public education system is the best example of that. I mean, it's been record budget after record budget after record budget on education, and we're still just about dead last in education. It's unbelievable. And what is his solution? What do we need? More. And if you were a contractor and you were going to do a bid on doing a bathroom remodel, and they asked you how much it was going to cost, and you just said more. Right. That's not how it works. No, tell us what you're going to do. Tell us how much it's going to cost, and what are we going to get for what we give you? They never do that. It's always just more, with zero to sometimes even not only negligible but also negative results from throwing more and more and more money.
Well, and they do this, but this is not look at the political landscape in Alabama, Brian. Is there anything that says more government when you elect a Republican supermajority, when you have every constitutional office, statewide constitutional office is held by a Republican. It's the writing's on the wall here. We don't need more government. I think the people of the state are trying to send a message, and sometimes they don't communicate it, and oftentimes it gets kind of missed. But the idea that the more as you speak of is not that is not the spirit of the election results. That is not what we want. We want less government, less. Start shrinking these budgets, get things in a more Republican spirit, which you would identify as that's a conservative impulse there. If we wanted bigger education budgets, if we wanted gambling, if we didn't want school choice, we would elect the Democrats. We didn't elect Democrats, we elected Republicans.
Yeah. No, I think that's a phenomenal point. And I mentioned this on the last monologue I did. I discussed that you never see something good that's on the Republican Party platform that people want. They're never threatening committee chair seats for the good thing, right? When they start twisting arms and they start bringing out the force of the speaker's office, it's never like, we're going to shrink, we're going to lower taxes, damn it, get in line. No, it's never that. It's, we're going to do gambling. We're going to increase, the gas tax. We're going to, that's when you see the big guns come out. It's always to do something that is against the party platform, that's against the wishes of the people. It's never the thing that's on their mailers that they send out when they get elected every 4 years. Those are never the things that they're twisting arms to get done. And I think that's kind of, it's horrible.
Well, yeah. Well, gas tax is a great example. It was more egregious than this gambling vote was, because you didn't only have just back then Speaker McCutcheon and his office leaning on members. You had the governor. You had the governor and her whiteboard and a red dot next to your name if you were against it, a black dot if they didn't know where you were, and a green dot if you were with them. And that blackboard, now, they had a special session at the beginning of the 2019 year, session year, so they could get this gas tax increase done without the BIR requirements. They expedited everything. Now, they would have had the votes to get what they wanted, but it wasn't good enough just to get what they wanted. They needed to make an example. You had to be with them. They had plenty of votes. The Rebuild Alabama Act would have passed, and life would have moved on. But you had to make a statement. You were either with them or against them. And they remembered, if you were against them, it was like they were keeping score. So, effectively, you had freshman members, new in office, recently sworn in, and the first vote they got to take is this massive gas tax increase. And the way they did it, at the time, I think there were people who were like, yeah, I could see Alabama hasn't done this since the 1990s. But they used every force imaginable to get everybody on board so it wouldn't be an issue in 2022.
Yep. Yeah, and one of my kind of baptism by fire as I jumped into Alabama politics, I talked to a state rep very early on. We were maybe 2 months into starting 1819. And I talked to him, and he's like, Brian, I'm going to tell you what's going on. And he went through this whole situation. He says, please don't tell anybody I told you this. This has got to stay off the record. I was told that if I was against them, that they would make sure my family members never worked in this state again. Like, legitimate fear. Crazy. So here we are moving into what looks like another legislative session with a potential gambling push. We're hearing rumblings of it all over the place. It certainly seems, just like which we're going to cover when we're done with this conversation, that coordinated effort by the state agencies to kind of eulogize Kay Ivey was very weird. The fact that Bronner, as legislative session approaches, is throwing shade on people that would be quote unquote considered anti-gambling, and then promoting with a very piss poor argument of why we need gambling. What do you see with gambling in this next session?
It's got to happen early. It's got to happen first. And let me explain some things, kind of some moving parts and pieces here. They lost Greg Reed, who went to go work for what was the Department of Labor. I think it's like the Department of Workforce Development or something now. And he's going to be the secretary there. So they lost a pro-gambling vote. Now, Reed's replacement is not going to be for gambling, but they still got to get to that 3/5 threshold to get it on the ballot for a constitutional amendment. That's always been the problem for the pro gamblers. Well, let's look at everything kind of like in fast forward into the future. If they look at this year as a wash, we can't get it done. They can't do it in the fourth year of a quadrennium. That's the election year. You don't do big things in election year that may upset incumbents' election cycles. So it's not likely it's going to happen in that fourth year. Beyond the fourth year of the quadrennium, you start all over again. Who knows who's governor then? Would it be a Will Ainsworth or a Tommy Tuberville or whoever? Would they be pro or anti-gambling? And you really don't know what the future has in store. So let me tell you this. These first few months of this session are probably going to be the only chance, and I think it's a long shot, but any sort of chance of gambling would come in the maybe first month or month and a half of the session.
Okay. And something I want you to explain to our audience. Historically, the power brokers, at one time, the absolute, like, Julius Caesar, thumbs up, thumbs down power broker in the state was Paul Hubbard with the Alabama Education Association. They lost power. I'm not going to get into how and why. That's not pertinent. But then what's basically happened is, maybe not to the degree that Paul Hubbard had it, the Business Council of Alabama and the Chamber of Commerce has kind of filled that power vacuum. And there's a big fear and that if this gambling passes, that the power brokers in the state are going to be either the Porch Creek Indians or these other gambling interests. Talk about that.
Yeah, look at Florida, and they legalized gambling, and look how powerful the Seminole Indian tribe is. But, I mean, I don't know that we would put some guards in place, but there's a fear. So when BCA instituted it was under Bill Canary, when it instituted its takeover of the storming the State House and Mike Hubbard, and you can go back and review all that history, there was a time and place when the Alabama Education Association, the teachers union, and Paul Hubbard just had this extraordinary power, and everybody had to get in line behind the teachers union, and that included the big mules. Well, and this is what I believe in theory caused BCA to look at that 2010 Republican Tea Party wave, if you recall, and they hitched their wagon to it, and they got behind Republicans, and that's when they took over the State House and moved the AE out of the way. And once again, you had sort of the business community thriving in Montgomery politics. Well, the fear from the business community is you bring in gambling and in any form, be it through Indian gaming with the Porch Creek Indians, or be it through other entities that may do gambling if we were to legalize it, then you would have a new big mule, and potentially they would have to get in line behind that new big mule, just like it's 1995 and Paul Hubbard sitting up at the balcony pointing at his eyes or his nose. There's a legitimate fear for the business community that could happen against. So there's a little they're trying to be real careful here, but what they're doing with these gambling bills, when they design them, when they write them, when they put these limitations in place about campaign contributions, I mean, it's just becoming this big behemoth bill, stack of papers, and I think it always collapses under its own weight.
Yeah. And, they're always fishing out this idea that it's going to be a lottery only. That's the thing. They're like, oh, just give us a clean lottery bill. Just give us a clean lottery bill. My understanding is, and again, that's where all the propaganda is aimed, is at the lottery bill. The stuff you're seeing is, we want scratch tickets. Why won't they let us vote on scratch tickets? The problem is that they're always connected. With the scratch tickets comes the full-on casino gambling. And even if they did pass a clean lottery bill, that constitutional amendment that prevents games of chance would go away, and then it's just a few years until the gambling interests have a casino. So there really is no way to do a clean lottery. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, well, they wouldn't let a clean lottery go anyway. So this is the dirty little secret. Clean lottery, or whatever you want to call it, polls really well. It's very popular. It gets a lot of support. People just want a lottery, okay? Fine, but you're never going to get that in the state. Let me explain to you why. Just because of the way you have to do a constitutional amendment. You got to have 3/5 of the body of both the House and the Senate to get a constitutional amendment on the ballot so that the people can have a right to vote on gambling or whatever it is. And the problem is there are a number of Republicans in Alabama who are never, ever, ever going to vote for gambling in any form. They're always going to be no. So when a Republican pushes for gambling, what do they have to do? They have to look to the other side of the aisle, and they have to go try to bring in some Democrat votes. When you start doing that, it gets very complicated, and you bring on these Democrats, and they want, exceptions for Green Track, for Victoryland, for, Whitehall, or you could go down to Birmingham Racecourse, all these gambling places, and it just becomes this is kind of the patchwork mess we have now, but nobody wants to give anybody a leg up. So you're never going to get that clean, quote unquote, clean lottery bill that everybody talks about in this state, just because you can never get the number of votes, the 3/5 majority that's needed for a constitutional amendment to repeal the prohibition on gambling in Alabama.
Yep. It seems like the whole crabs in a bucket thing, like as soon as it seems like someone's going to make progress, the other gambling groups go and snag them and pull them back down.
Well, that's exactly what happened this last year, Brian, because that's the way it looked. And then Senator Greg Albritton from Escambia County, from Atmore, well, he claims Range or Atmore, depending on what day of the week, but he voted against this bill because PCI did not like the bill. But these guys, I mean, people want to come after conservatives like us as to why we don't have gambling. Well, just probably a bigger share of the blame should go to the gambling entities warring with one another. For years, it was the Poarch Creek Indians at odds with the dog track casinos. That was the big fight. They finally, like Del Marsh, got them in a room together and ironed their differences out, and they've been kind of at peace ever since. But, now you got just nobody wants to give the other a leg up or an advantage. And there is a big part of the problem for gambling, arguing amongst one another, as us people out here trying to do it for the right reasons.
Yeah. Well, I think we need to all, depending on whatever you feel about gambling, whatever you think about lottery, whatever you think about all of these things. And again, I wouldn't even put down that me and Jeff are just like super like religiously based anti-gamblers or so. Like, that's not where this is coming from. Every single bill they've ever put forward is such a just an absolute god-awful atrocity of government picking winners and losers, creating enforcement agencies. They're always just absolute trash from that standpoint. Now, me personally, I'm not a real big gambling person. I don't think it's going to be good for the state. Sure, that's fine. But the reason to me it's such a big issue is it's never this bill that just makes a ton of sense, where there's obvious, benefits that are going to come, to these areas of need. That it's never that. It's always just these horrible bills.
Well, yeah, you're right. Picking winners and losers is a big part of this. There's no free market, conservatism. All these libertarians out there, it's just state-run vice, essentially. But I like to say this: you could probably within 2 hours of anywhere in the state find a place to go gamble. I think there's a lot of people who object to gambling on religious, on moral, and ethical grounds, and they just don't want the their state seal of approval on gambling. And that's it. It's not like we're out here like thumping our Bibles and saying what's going to happen, but it's also this government for, of, and by the people green lighting something that's objectionable for whatever reason. And, that gets ignored. And then we also talk about this. It's the societal cost. There's got to be a societal cost that comes along with gambling. Let me tell you a real quick story, Brian. In Mobile, Alabama, we were getting the city of Biloxi, Mississippi was busing their homeless to Mobile and dropping them off. Well, what's going on there? Why are there so many homeless people in Biloxi? What do you think it could be? They didn't, 30, 40 years ago, Biloxi didn't have a homeless problem. What's the one thing that's changed about Biloxi, Mississippi, in that time span?
No,
it's casino gambling.
So many anecdotal stories. I know one. I maybe have mentioned this before, and we'll probably do a story on it at some point. A lady I know who runs an incredible ministry that helps women who've been in sex trafficking, been victims of sex trafficking. And she says that a large percentage of the women that she gets at her ministry all come from casinos, dog track gambling, all of these different things that are associated with that we're basically trying to rubber stamp and legalize. And then another kind of anecdotal story, I've got a friend who lives in Macon County who's got he lives on a 500-acre farm or 1,000-acre farm somewhere out in Macon County. And he's got a cabin, and when Victoryland wasn't running, when it's not running, no theft issues whatsoever. Nothing's ever stolen off of his property. As soon as it's able to be gambled there, everything on his property that's not bolted down is getting stolen and sold so that people can go to the casinos. He literally had to put bars up on the windows of his cabin. And so you just see this kind of stuff all over. It's like, why are we pushing so hard for this, guys? And we know it's going to make some people rich, and they're the ones probably behind pushing it.
And that's what we need. We need to be clear about this. Sure, there is revenue for the state in this, and it'll either go to the ETF or general fund, however they determined it would go. But the people who are pushing this are not doing it for that. They're not doing it because they want to have more money for schools in Alabama. It is because they are going to get rich, okay? Yeah. It is a deal for them to get rich, and they're using their clout, their influence with government to get rich. And, I mean, that's fine. It happens every day in Montgomery. It's part of the game. But I think it's important to point out that this isn't just some philanthropic thing that is that these casino companies or whoever is out there pushing this is wanting to do. It's because there is a profit motive here that is pushing a lot of this.
All right, well, we'll wrap up this segment. We're going to hit a commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to be discussing the fate of Kay Ivey and making some predictions on whether she makes it to February or through the legislative session. All right, we'll be back. If you're running a ministry or you own a business, my guess is that you've been thinking about starting a podcast for a while now, but for various reasons, it hasn't happened yet. Send me an email. I need to personally connect you with Yonder Child Media. They built this studio in 2 days and tackle all of the production. I just come in, start talking, and leave. It's that easy. They do everything else. Whether you want to record at your business or a home office like they just built for me, you come in, start talking, and Yonder Child will do everything else. Send me an email. That's going to be Bryan, Brian.Dawson, Dawson, at 1819news.com, and I'd be happy to personally connect you. All right, guys, welcome back. Thanks for sticking around past the break. Appreciate it. I talk to people all the time who listen to that commercial that runs inside this podcast. They're like, man, I really need to start a podcast. I know I need to reach out to those guys. Don't wait. Don't be that guy. Reach out. Send me an email, Brian.Dawson at 1819news.com. I'll connect you with them. They can get you podcasting from your home studio like this, or you guys have seen me recording there in the office at the headquarters in that studio as well. You can do video, you can do audio only, you can do whatever. They can help you out. So definitely reach out to me, and I'll put you in touch with Adrian so that you can get started. All right, so this next segment is just another kind of bizarre thing that I guess they didn't think anyone would notice. I don't know. I guess we probably make a lot of hay off of that. Like, for so long, there was no one that would pay any attention and actually report on stuff. So people just get sloppy and lazy and think that, you're stupid and we're stupid. And in that, they, all of the state agencies, so Alabama Department of insert whatever here, those state agencies, there was a flurry of social media traffic, press releases, whatever, that was talking about how beautiful and wonderful and sinless Kay Ivey is, and how amazing and beautiful she is, and how she walks on water, and all of those things. And it was, again, a lot of them, to me, they kind of read like eulogies, like she was, going away or passing away or something. It was a very bizarre way to start out the new year. And so we wrote on that. The conversation exploded on social media. Scott Buttram, our good friend, posted something on Twitter about, his prediction is that this is basically their way of, she's going to step out of the way when the time is right, and Ainsworth will basically be given the keys to the kingdom, ascend to the throne. And then that is the plan and the strategy. And I came in underneath, and sometimes I just get going on Twitter and forget that, the whole world reads what we post on there. And I told Scott, that's my prediction as well. That's what I see. That's what I see happening. And, the interwebs exploded, and then it kind of stirred the pot, which is always fun to do, but wasn't my intention to stir the pot, but it did, and I don't mind. So kind of from your perspective, what do you see going on here, Jeff?
Well, I mean, the flurry of accolades for Kay Ivey triggered something. I don't know what's going on there. Never really got an explanation for that. But Scott Buttram's question, it seemed a little far-fetched, but it seemed like a legitimate one. we said, well, let's just ask, what's going on here? Why are you doing this? This is strange. It's a very dear leader vibe when you send out when the DECA, when the Alabama Department of Veterans Affairs, go figure, or the Alabama Works, and all of these like state agency related social media accounts all at the same time decide to hit Kay Ivey with flattery, and so what's going on here? And Butcher told us his theory. So we went and we asked, and they didn't really have an answer. And on this though, like, well, is she going to leave and step aside? No comment.
Yeah.
We're not going to respond to that. What are we supposed to do with that? Why can't we get a yes or no question answered? And it was just no comment. So, I mean, Brian, I don't want a bunch of like oligarchs, picking and choosing who our governor is going to be. We should have the ability to vote on it. It should have never been done like it was with the transition from Bentley to Ivey. Kay Ivey is now going to be the longest consecutive serving governor in this state's history. But it does beg the question, would Kay Ivey do a solid for Will Ainsworth, who may be now Steve Marshall's not running. He confirmed that last month. But would Tommy Tuberville, who would probably win in a head-to-head against Will Ainsworth, would she do him a solid and get out of the way and give him the incumbency advantage in a general election, at least in a Republican primary? And it's a question we'd ask, and thinking that's the wisdom behind it. Not that we're cheering for this or anything like that, but why not just ask? And I think we were told no comment.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is, the biggest thing that we need to be on a watch out for is that this oligarchical system of giving people incumbency. In the state of Alabama, incumbency goes a very, very, very long way, specifically in the governor's race. Obviously, Kay Ivey was able to win in landslides. She didn't even have to debate anybody. And let's be honest, she's not, she's not a very winsome or charismatic person. She's not out there traveling the state, shaking babies and kissing hands, as I always say. She's not doing any of that, and she was still able to win in landslides because she had incumbency. So incumbency is very powerful. It was given to Kay Ivey because of a moral lapse by Robert Bentley. Kay Ivey has incumbency. She wins an election. She wins another election, and then hands it off to Will, who the theory would be is going to use that incumbency to win. And you basically have 2 9 or 10-year governors back to back, and none of which were actually elected without having incumbency. That's a problem. That is a problem. And then there's always all the conspiracy theories of this was planned and 2022 Will Ainsworth was going to run, and who knows? I have no idea.
Well, that was the rumor, right? That the Lieutenant Governor Will Ainsworth was not going to run against Kay Ivey in that 22 cycle. That she would back him when he did run in 26 if he would support her in 22 for re-election. I was at Will Ainsworth's announcement when he was running for re-election for Lieutenant Governor. Brian, it would have rivaled a mid-tier presidential candidate's announcement for Lieutenant Governor. I couldn't believe it. It was right by the lake at Guntersville, Riley Green there. Governor Kay Ivey flew in for it. It was remarkable, and he did the same for her. So there was, for at least a little period of time, a little kumbaya between the two. Now I think they've fallen out of sorts again, but the point I'm trying to make here is what you're trying to say is, could there have been a deal made that, hey, you back me in this election and I'll step aside and you'll have the way paid for you to the governor's mansion?
Yeah, and it's one of those things. It's like you could never admit that you did that, so you could never really deny it either, right? In the sense that if you go and ask someone, hey, well, what are they going to say? Yes? No, they can't, and so it's not even worth asking.
Right.
So it just leaves us all kind of like, what's going on?
Well, it's just.
But again, the scrutiny really belongs on the fact of Kay Ivey. If she steps down, we're now doing this incumbency handoff again, and I don't think it's good for the state of Alabama.
No, you're right, but it's just this rampant speculation you and I are engaging in. They can put an end to it if they wanted to. Why not just say, there's nothing like that going on. I intend to finish out my term until whatever it is, January the 10th, 2027, and I will be proud of my accomplishments, and and I'll be on my way or whatever. But there's this sort of like weird. We're not going to acknowledge that. We're not. That's not a. We're not even going to dignify that with a response. But I honestly and sincerely, these are like legitimate questions that the media should be asking or talking about. We do this on a national level all the time. Why is it taboo to ask these kinds of questions right now in Alabama? Is it just not polite? Bless our hearts, we don't know what we're doing. But I find that just to be such an unsatisfactory response.
Well, and to be fair, the media has basically been controlled for however many years in the state, and so they're not going to ask those type of questions, and that's what we want to bring to the table. How old is Kay Ivey?
80.
80. And I don't know of anyone who's had a meeting with her in any recent history where they were just blown away by how cognizant and alert she was in that meeting either. Who knows? Again, speculation,
Brian, but let me say this, and I don't understand the governor's team strategy here with her. I never have. Look, she won both her elections by big margins, the general election. She beat a crowded Republican primary field in 22 without a runoff. She did the same in 2018 with some very formidable candidates. One of the best mayors Huntsville has ever had. She beat him without a runoff. She's 80 years old. The people in this state obviously like the job she's doing. If she gets sick and she has to be treated for an illness, why not be upfront with the public and say, hey, there's something going on here, but we're getting it taken care of? But you always feel like with this bunch, there is this like desire to hide it, to cover it up, to act like there's nothing there. And when you do that, it just raises all these red flags. Why do they do this? Why don't they have a better communication strategy? I've been watching this go on for a long time. And it's always this, it's sort of this like, you get these snide little smug responses like, you have a Merry Christmas or whatever. There's nothing to see here, nothing for you to worry about. We're not going to respond to that. It's just, one of the easiest jobs in Montgomery has to be communications for this governor.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's reminiscent of everything we just watched with Joe Biden on the national stage is what it feels like to me. Oh, no, he's fine. We promise he's fine. No, super alert. Just had a meeting with him. He's great. And he's gone, right? It has that feel to it.
Right. And I don't, this isn't, there was another a publisher of another website that says, the people who are talking about this stuff are people who want things to happen. Nobody wants this to happen. But the chief executive of the state, we need to be aware of how she is, what she's up to, if she's capable of doing the job. And no one's going to begrudge her if health kicks in and something happens, and even if she had to step aside. But look, like this Ivey administration has never been upfront about any of this. And I always, there's a lack of transparency there, and they won't tell you things. Not that we need to know every aspect of her medical history, but we do need to know if she is capable of running the state.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, just like with Joe Biden, if she's not, if he wasn't running the country, who is? And then that asks the question, if she's not running the state, who is?
And Brian, one more thing on that. As the media, if we ignore that question, we're no better than the people who ignored that question about Joe Biden. I mean,
Yep,
in 2018, I defended Governor Ivey. It's on the record. I mocked the people who talked about her health. Kyle Whitmire, and John Archibald, and some of her opponents at the time would tell us she's not going to finish. I've been hearing this for 20 years about Kay Ivey, but now you see her out and about, and you saw the fall at the Carolee Dobson event. There's a bunch of other things that have happened public that just didn't get reported that I saw with my own eyes. And I think it's fair game just to say, hey, Governor, are you okay? Are you up for this job? And, when's the last time she did a sit-down interview? She does like one interview a year with Capitol Journal and Alabama Public Television. Name me another governor in the state that has such a limited media schedule.
Yeah. And were you at the Laura Trump Algop dinner?
No, I was, yeah, and she didn't respond, right?
Yeah, she was given an award, and when you're supposed to give your acceptance speech, she just looked and then just walked back down the stairs and sat down, and I was like, what was that?
And then Dale Jackson and I were at the Auburn, New Mexico game the next night, and it was homecoming. She did the same thing. It's just like I know. If it feels like we're picking on her, I mean, it's not. It's just these are things that are happening in our state, and we're just supposed to just be nice little troopers and act like there's nothing to see here.
Nope, that's not why we started 1819 for sure. And hope that she is in good health. Hope everything's fine. But I'm obviously skeptical of that being the case. So. All right. Well, any last words, Jeff, as we wrap this up?
No, I would just say, not wishing ill on anybody, not hoping for an abrupt departure from the governor. None of that is despite what's been said, this isn't like a self-licking ice cream cone. I just think when you see things, kind of weird activity, and then you start asking questions, and you get the the hand to the face. You're not allowed to ask that. Well, it's just gonna create more questions. But it's not like we're cheering for some kind of outcome here. All we want to know is well, is everything okay? And I think that is fair game, especially in a state with so much going on like Alabama has.
Yeah, completely agree. All right, guys. Well, there's some inside Alabama politics there. Pun intended. Nothing. Okay. Anyway, I don't know. This is. I think we may keep this format going. I'll be doing more monologuing. I'll be bringing Jeff on. Maybe it'll be like the 1819 editorial. We just pick whatever topic's going on in the state and hit it like a piñata and get it done. So, Jeff, thanks for coming on, and we will be back next week. Until next time, put your trust in God and keep your powder dry.